Good evening. My name is Sharon Arkfitz, the appointed clerk of the Board of Education. The July 11th, 2017 regular and organizational meeting of Penfield Central School District is now called to order at 6:05. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the first order of business is to administer the oath of office to our newly elected board members. So if John Otney would please stand and receive the oath. And raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America.
I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America.
And the Constitution of the State of New York.
And the Constitution of the State of New York.
And that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of Member of Board of Education.
And I will faithfully discharge the duties of a member of the Board of Education.
In the Penfield Central School District according to the best of my ability.
In the Penfield Central School District according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations. Okay, next, Lisa, if you could stand and receive your oath, please. And raise your right hand and say, I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America.
I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America
And the Constitution of the State of New York.
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
And that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of Member of the Board of Education.
and I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of the member of the Board of Education
In the Penfield Central School District according to the best of my abilities.
in the Penfield Central School District according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations. Okay, the next order of business is the election of officers. Nominations will be received for the office of Board President and Board Vice President. According to the Roberts Rule of Order, a second to the nomination is not necessary. However, if someone wishes to make a second for support, it will be accepted. After the nominations are closed, a vote will be taken. So, the meeting is now open for nominations for the office of Board President for the 17-18 school year. Do
I
have
would
a-
like a motion that we nominate Catherine Dean for president.
Dean, is there a second?
I second.
Okay. Okay, so John Piper nominated Catherine Dean, and Barb Babriar seconded the motion. Do we have any other nominations for president? Okay, seeing no further nominations, I declare the nominations for board president closed and will call for a vote. All those in favor of Catherine Dean for board president? 7-4, and I see none opposed. So congratulations, Catherine. You are elected the Penfield president for the 2017-18 school year. Okay, so now it's your turn to receive your oath. Here's one for you to follow along.
I was starting to sweat about that.
No. So if you just raise your right hand, and it's the same thing here. I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America
I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and I will faithfully discharge the duties of office of President of the Board of Education
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of President of the Board of Education
in the Penfield Central School District according to the best of my abilities.
in the Penfield Central School District according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations. Okay. So now the meeting will open for nominations for the office of Board Vice President for the 2017-18 school year. Do I have any nominations for Vice President?
I would move the nomination of Mark Elledge for vice president.
Second. Oh,
Carol? Okay. Okay, we have one motion by John Piper and seconded by Carol Nazara for Mark Elledge to be Vice President of Board of Education. Is there any other nominations? Okay, seeing no further nominations, we'll close and call for a vote. All those in favor of Mark Elledge for Vice President? Opposed? None? 7-0. Congratulations, Mark. You're the Vice President of the Board. I do solemnly swear to support the Constitution of the United States of America
I do solemnly swear to support the Constitution of the United States of America
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York.
and I will faithfully discharge the duties of Office of Vice President of the Board of Education
And I will faithfully discharge the duties of the Office of Vice President of the Board of Education
and the Penfield Central School District according to the best of my ability.
in the Penfield Central School District according to the best of my abilities.
Congratulations, Mark. Okay, thank you, and I will now turn the meeting over to our new board president, Catherine Dean.
So may I have a motion and a second, please, that the Board of Education move into executive session for the purpose of discussing the acquisition of a particular parcel of land at 6:12 PM?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed. Thank you. Okay, our meeting has reconvened at 7:05. Okay. May I have a motion and a second, please, that the agenda of July 11, 2017 be approved as submitted?
So moved.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed. Excuse me while I get my glasses so I can see what I'm doing. Okay. Proposed resolution that the board approve the following consent agenda: the approval of minutes of June 13th, 2017 is submitted, the acceptance of recommendations from the Committee on Special Education, acceptance of recommendations from the Committee on Preschool Special Education, acceptance of recommendations from the Superintendent for personnel changes, budget transfers July 1st, 2016 through June 30th, 2017, request to approve the renewal of RFB number 1512 for service and maintenance of cogeneration system at PHS with TCOGen for the 2017-18 school year, second of 2 annual renewal options, and request to dispose of unserviceable textbooks. May I have a motion and a second, please, that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed. Thank you. You have a treasurer's report attached, and for the month ending May 31st, 2017. May I have a motion and a second, please, that the treasurer's report, including the cash report, general fund cash report, the general fund revenue status report, general fund budget status report, school lunch fund cash report, and school lunch fund revenue and expense budget report for the month ending May 31st, 2017 be approved?
So moved.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed. Thank you. Okay, we have a textbook presentation.
Wait, can I introduce them?
Yes, would you please?
I'd love to.
Actually, I was going to ask you.
Absolutely. I love introducing people. So, actually, I'll ask Adam Sweeney, one of our science teachers, to come on up, and Nicole Whitehead, who's been here many times, our director of STEAM, but here to talk a little bit about a AP Physics C textbook that just came through. So I'll turn it over to you guys.
So we are very pleased to be presenting a textbook for your consideration tonight for a new course that we're offering beginning in the fall, which is AP Physics C. And there it is. It's quite light. So Mr. Sweeney is, he's been really the one that's been doing a lot of the research, talking to other districts, talking to the College Board about the best textbook for this course. So I'm going to turn it over to him to give you a brief overview of the textbook.
When I took a look at the different textbooks for choosing the textbook, the first thing I looked at was kind of what had been out there with different districts, and through some of my contacts, through different peer teachers at different schools, I kind of did a kind of cross sections of books used at different districts. This was one of the 3 books that I had kind of taken a look at more seriously. The reason I chose this book as opposed to some of the other books was a couple reasons. First, it has, as far as this book, it's been around for, at least in different iterations, for a number of years. I think the textbook first came out in like the 1960s, and it's really been an industry standard for physics, and it's gone through a number of revisions to kind of bring it up to date. But the first thing that drew me to it, as opposed to some of the other books we considered, was its history. It had won a number of awards. I think it was the most influential physics instructional book of the 20th century. Obviously, it's gone through multiple revisions since then, but kind of bringing it up to date. But it got really well reviews in terms of trying to take a very complex topic and break it down into a more simplistic way so that students and instructional materials can be used without becoming overly cumbersome, where it really makes it, so the students have trouble digesting what they're reading. So it was very highly reviewed there. Amongst my peer teachers that I went and took a look at, this was one of the books that was most widely used. I think I talked to 5 different teachers, and 3 of them had used this. In addition to that, I did a bunch of online reviews. I took a look at this textbook. I had another physical copy of a different textbook that I took a look at, and I was reading through them. And this just overall really seemed to be the one that had the best balance of good instructional materials contained within the book, as well as, a really good cross-section. And the one thing I really liked about it is it offered a lot of opportunity to go a little bit beyond with the AP courses. We kind of stopped around with the structured curriculum around May, but it has a lot of opportunity to allow the students to go in different directions with their studies after that point.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? Carol?
Hi. So, will we have enough time? Because this is not going to be voted on until next board meeting, which I think is beginning August. Will we have enough time to place the order for the books and for the books to come for the students to be able to use them, or?
We looked at the timeline for how the books would be coming through, and we didn't anticipate it being approved at this meeting. We thought that if it's the beginning of August, that was actually earlier than I thought, so that's good news for me. But there'll be enough time to get it in there. And really, when we start off with the course, because it's a calculus-based course, really the first couple weeks, we're not going to be so much into the text because we're going to be layering in our calculus and trying to bring its significance for physics into the classroom before we start really hitting the books. So when we talked with the supplier, when we looked at the book, that timeline would be more than sufficient for getting it fully fledged and hit the ground running.
Okay, great. I have another question, not necessarily about this book, but
Sure.
we do get reimbursement from the state for textbooks and everything. Do they make a difference between an AP book and a Regents book?
No.
No? Okay.
It's a dollar amount per student in the building. So it's,
Okay.
regardless of if it's a very expensive book or a inexpensive book, but it's just about how many kids you have.
Okay, all right,
And-
thank you.
And one of the requirements, one of my responsibilities is to approve courses that teachers such as Adam put forth for consideration. And one of the requirements actually is that there be a textbook linked to AP, which is why we're a little bit later in this process than before. Is I think Adam was kind of going back and forth as to, do I need this book, do I not? It's a new course. And then when we really looked into it deeper, having a textbook is very heavily favored by the College Board to go along with the course.
You mentioned, I think a good point too, is that this will be the first year for Physics C.
Correct.
So as a reminder, this was one of the new courses that Dr. Maloney presented earlier around the course description guide. And last I heard, I think there's, not to scare Adam, but 30 or 28 students signed
30.
up for that course.
That's accurate.
Which Adam's a newer hire. Was this your second year?
This is my second year, yeah.
So, physics is, I'm a humanities guy, so physics wasn't my cup of tea in high school, and I avoided it in college. So I already have the job, so I think I'm safe saying that.
Boo.
But Adam, I will give kudos when he's here, is that he has done a great job increasing numbers, getting kids excited. We know that STEAM and STEM and that sort of mindset is what's needed in the future. And so I'd like to give Adam some kudos for that. So thank you for all the work you're doing to get kids into that class, especially one as rigorous as AP Physics C.
Well, thank you for that.
And I would like to also add another kudos that we received results from AP last week on July 7th, and Adam was able to increase our number of students achieving 4s and 5s from the physics class he taught this year over previous years. And it's been a relatively new class for us, so that growth is really exciting to see. So kudos for that as well.
Wow, that's terrific.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Adam? Comments? Thank you. Okay, superintendent's report.
Thank you. We have a special report. I should have had that up. I apologize. It's our physics textbook. That's the information in the agenda. Today we have our student and staff honors I'll go through. I have an update on our 2018 Elementary Additions project, some slides to go over to start communicating continue our communication with the community. Mr. Pfeiffer will be talking about our professional development plan, and then we'll turn to Mr. Maloney for an overview of our organizational items, which take place at this meeting every year. A donation, just a very great thank you to Mrs. Joyce Bryant, who has graciously donated 2 violins, 3 bows, a tuner, and a rock stop that will be very useful to her instrumental music program and enjoyed by students for many years to come. So I love these donations, especially we have such a great music program here, and to know that there's community members out there who donate these things to us for our students to use. They really get a lot of use, and it's great, and we appreciate that. A Star Student Award, congratulations to PHS incoming senior Luke McCandless on being named the recipient of the Monroe County Sheriff's Department Star Student Award. Really big deal. We've got the sheriff there with our student and Charlie Rudes, as well as our student's dad. And, one of the perks of living in Penfield is I get to give a shout out and say Luke lives a couple houses down from me, and he really is an incredible kid. He's just a wonderful kid, great family, and I think it's a great award. Another award from one of our staff members, Indian Landing Elementary School librarian Nancy Logie, has been selected to attend 2 workshops this summer. Both of them sound really exciting. Neighborhoods in Japan, learning and teaching about community through stories, videos, and images. And then she's one of only 36 teachers to be selected to attend a conference on living and writing deliberately, the Concord landscapes and legacy of Henry Thoreau, which I just think would be an amazing opportunity. So just kudos to Nancy and the work she does. And I know we actually the board visited the Indian Landing Library. If you remember, Alan McNift's in the audience, but over the last year there was new furniture that was purchased for there, and it's absolutely beautiful. It's one of the great libraries to go into in our elementary schools. PHS Graduation is my last update, and I just wanted to give a thank you to everybody here who attended, obviously our Board of Education members, district office, and the community as well who came out. I just think, I might say it every year, but I think that was the best graduation I've been to, and I might have said that last year as well, but it really is such a great opportunity. There is a great deal of behind-the-scenes work and stress and anxiety and sleepless nights from lots of high school staff and administration and clerical working to get everything up and running. And the minute we start walking down the aisle at 7 p.m., at least for me, all the anxiety goes away, because at that point, there's no turning back. But once again, our high school seniors, our graduates now, really showcase pride, honor, success. They were just wonderful. And again, thank you for the board for being there. I really appreciate it. And John, I'll get you the date for next June. All right. And yes, the board started last year, 2 years, last year, a couple years ago. Red shoes, so we'll get you a pair of red shoes. So thank you again. I just thought it was wonderful. turn into the 2018 Elementary Additions Project. So we'll take a stop from celebrations to update the community on where we are. Our tentative scope, it's a couple slides of reminders. We have talked about this. This information is also on the web page underneath the 2018 Classroom Additions page. We have been started over this past school year looking at classroom additions to address overcrowding and increased enrollment in the town of Penfield. And, obviously the one that we all see every day is Windsor Ridge, 83 homes that are, if not completely sold, they're almost sold. And they're going up fast. And it takes any developer about 3 months to build a house after you sign the contract, so you can be move-in ready, 3-4 months. And it takes the school district about 3 years after a public vote before we can get kids in a classroom. And so we'll never catch up to that. But obviously there's a lot of development going on in Penfield. We were in the DNC not that long ago for one of the communities in the Monroe County that's growing. Most of our counterparts are decreasing, and we're projecting and seeing increases. And so we do know that our classroom space is a necessity at the elementary school especially. So the scope, this scope has always been the same right from the get-go, is we're looking at 4 classrooms at Scribner Elementary School, including a gym and cafeteria expansion and some parking improvements. 4 classrooms at Cobbles Elementary School, including gym and cafeteria expansions and parking and parent traffic improvement. And then 4 classrooms at Indian Landing Elementary School, including cafeteria expansion, an updated bus loop, and parent drop-off improvements. So that's always sort of been in the scope, and we're pretty good with design and what we want it to look like. However, the other area that we also is critical for the district is buildings and grounds and our transportation facilities. So currently, the Buildings and Grounds Department and the Transportation Department share a small outdated facility on 5 Mile Line where it's been for years. The site is too small for both departments, and given the expected increase in enrollment and the need for additional buses, the district is currently exploring its options for these facilities. The preliminary plan, which we talked about a number of times, we had a community forum that talked about it. We had a forum, a semi-private forum for neighbors on the Atlantic Ave property area. So we've talked about this before. Our preliminary plan was to build Buildings and Grounds, their own facility on district-owned property at 3021 Atlantic Avenue, and then renovate the current transportation facility on 5 Mile Line Road and keep our buses there. However, the district's initial study of the Atlantic Avenue property revealed that the wetlands extend further than first believed, making it very difficult to build a maintenance facility on that site. And so therefore, the district is currently exploring other options for the buildings and grounds and transportation facilities. Our original discussion was leave transportation right where it was because the Atlantic Avenue property was not big enough for a bus garage and B&G, so our original discussion had always been just move B&G. Now that the Atlantic Avenue property is off the table because of the new wetland study, we're sort of back to the drawing board as a district and saying, okay, so now if we have to look at other options, do we also look at the potential for moving the bus garage? Because I think as a district, we're gonna, one of the things I love about Penfield, the board and our district administration, is that we don't want to leave any idea unturned or looked at. So once Atlantic Avenue came off the table, then we're sort of back to the drawing board with buildings and grounds and potentially transportation. So we have some options. I apologize, it's a little tricky to read, and this will be up on our webpage as soon as I get Nancy back. So just give us a couple days, and we'll get this slideshow up on our webpage as well for the community. But just want to go through it as we really looked at 4 options we have. There potentially are more options, but right now we're really looking at 4. And option 1, I just want to go over quickly, is do nothing with transportation and buildings and grounds, leave everything at 5 Mile Line, as well as the property in Linear Park, the water treatment plant that the town owns, that our school district has been renting and utilizing for buildings and grounds overflow. There's a great advantage to that. The project cost would be reduced because we wouldn't have to rebuild anything. There are some challenges, though. These aren't necessarily negatives. I'd like to point out they're challenges because we're a school district, so if you give us a challenge, we can find a way around it. But it's we got great thinkers and great people. But the challenges for not touching B&G and not touching transportation, just leaving everything at 5 Mile Line and Linear Park, is space issues are going to continue. We currently have drivers parking off-site and having to walk to get in to their buses. We have potential for off-site bus storage. We're going to need more buses. We're at full capacity at the 5 Mile Line site. We don't have any more room for new buses after this purchase that we're making based on this last budget vote. So those buses potentially would have to be parked at the high school, and that would take up parking at the high school. And then we do have some increased insurance claims. The district does have insurance on all of our vehicles, including our buses and our sites. And once you start packing buses next to each other and having to do lots of 3- and 5-point turns to move things around, the potential as we add more buses to that site is that our insurance claims go up. There's an increased annual cost to continue maintaining a facility that was built in the 60s. It's dated and inefficient. B&G will have to continue to use a facility at Linear Park, which we lease from the town, and it's going to require continuing repairs to that building. And the way that the rent works is that we take up any of those sort of minor repairs, and so sort of we're continuing to add money into that. Nothing major, but it is a continued expense for the future. There is no wash bay for the buses. In order to maintain all of our buses in our fleet, this last year we had to turn our one bus wash into a garage again, so we could repair buses at a consistent and a consistent pace. So what we have to do now is bring somebody in to wash the buses. Other districts do this as well, but it is wear and tear on the buses, especially in Rochester, Penfield, with the salt on the roads in the wintertime. Traffic will continue to be a problem on 5 Mile Line Road, as it always is, because the bus garage has been there for a long time. Potential increase in bus mechanic labor costs for overtime needs due to limited service bays. We only have 4 service bays over there now. I'm looking at Alan just to make sure that we had 3 in a bus wash. Now we have 4 service bays, but we have a lot of buses. So that means only 4 buses can be worked on at a time. So ultimately, it's overtime pay to the mechanics to continue to work longer hours to fix our buses when we need them fixed. So that's option 1. Option 2 is we own property on Gloria Drive, and we could move buildings and grounds out to Gloria Drive and then rebuild transportation at 5 Mile Line. So this option is similar to our original plan to move B&G to Atlantic and rebuild transportation right where they are at 5 Mile Line. Some advantages to moving B&G out to Gloria Drive: we currently own the property. Some improvement of space issues at 5 Mile Line. We would have some space added because we could get rid of or move B&G. We wouldn't get rid of them, but we'd be moving them to Gloria Drive. There are some challenges, and we knew this with Atlantic Avenue as well. There's no state aid on B&G construction, and so constructing a new B&G site, we don't get any state aid on that. We typically, if we were building a bus garage or other things, we can get upwards of 70% aid back from the state, which is obviously less of a tax impact to our community. It does have a remote location out on Gloria Drive, increased distance for B&G, some additional cost for fuel and loss of time. The property impact at Gloria Drive, there are some neighbors out there. We know anywhere we look to build, anything we do want to be good neighbors, just like we met with the Atlantic Avenue property owners. The property impact at Gloria Drive, it doesn't improve our overall bus routing. All buses would still be on the 5 Mile Line, so traffic would still be an issue. Short-term improvement of available space. It is a short-term improvement. We do get some more room at 5 Mile Line, but as you know, we're landlocked there, so we can't increase. What we have at 5 Mile Line is what we have. We can't add any more space there. And then no growth potential for 5 Mile Line. So this could potentially work. It would be more of a short-term solution, I think. The other option is to move everything to Gloria Drive. We own about 66 acres out on Gloria Drive, which we've owned since the late 50s. So we could move B&G and transportation there. Again, the advantages are similar to just moving B&G. We already own the property. However, a joint site would help with state aid, as some scope could be shared. So all of a sudden, if you put transportation and B&G together, we would be getting upwards of 70% aid potentially on more space, including some space potentially for B&G. 5 Mile Line could be used for other district purposes. B&G could leave the town leased facility space at Linear Park. We could pull out of there and put all of B&G together. There'd be no demolition cost of existing buildings at 5 Mile. If we were to rebuild transportation at 5 Mile, we would have to, and in our original plan was to demolish the existing building and rebuild. If we were to use the 5 Mile Line property as is, there are some things not student-based, but staff-based that could run out of that property. There's lots of options. I don't really want to share any because there's just lots of pie-in-the-sky ideas of what we could do. But potentially we could continue using that property and therefore pull people out of schools, not kids, but if we moved them out of schools, we could potentially get more classroom space. There are challenges, same as just moving B&G. It is a remote location. It is in Penfield, but it's much further to the east. The property impact at Gloria Drive would limit future options for the site. I think it's fair to say that when you look at Penfield and you look at our growth, we have a lot of open land out for the Penfield Central School District in Penfield and as you move into Wayne County, but is still Penfield Central Schools. And so potentially as we look down the road for the future, a challenge would be that it would limit future options down the road, whether it be 20, 40, or 60 years down the road on what we could build on Gloria Drive. Bus routing would become less efficient. It would be traffic on 441. Those buses would primarily have to come down 441 in the morning and in the afternoon and evening. And then a bus wash bay would have to be built at the 5 Mile Line site because that is on sewer, and out on Gloria Drive it's septic. And to do a bus wash and wash the number of buses we own with soap and water, that doesn't work on a septic line. I grew up with septic, and my dad would not even let all 4 of us take showers on the same day because of the septic. So I can't even imagine what it would be washing buses. So option 4 is a little different, and this one is once Atlantic Avenue went under water with the wetlands, and we realized we couldn't plan there. It did open up sort of going back to the drawing board a little bit, and we've had lots of conversations and wanted to publicly talk about these options. But option 4 is can we purchase another piece of land and move B&G and transportation to that site? Option 3 is we already own Gloria Drive, but there's some challenges. So what else is out there? Advantages of purchasing another piece of property would be adequate space. We could make sure that whatever we purchase would absolutely help us out for now and for the foreseeable future in Penfield for growth. A land purchase is eligible for state aid at 70%. So the impact and burden to the folks in Penfield like us that pay taxes and everybody else is that state aid would return 70% of the purchase of that land. Joint site would help, again, with state aid. If a centrally located parcel is found, B&G would be in a reasonable location to quickly respond to emergency issues at the school. Again, if there was a piece of land that worked for our needs. 5 Mile Line site could be used for other district purposes, as I've already discussed with the other options. It would leave Gloria Drive property available for future growth down the road if Penfield in the east continues to grow and we needed to potentially build a new school at some point, nowhere in the near foreseeable future, but at some point that land would be usable for that. B&G could leave the town leased facility, and again, there'd be no demolition of existing buildings at 5 Mile Line Road, and we could potentially use them for staff-based work in that current location. There are some challenges. Whenever a district buys land, they take that off the tax roll, and so therefore the land we own, like Gloria Drive, we don't pay taxes on it because it's off the tax roll, it's publicly owned. There is a potential based on where the property we find. It could be neighborhood impact, obviously. And then based on where it is, if it's not on sewer, we would have to build a wash bay at the 5 Mile Line site for the same reason I mentioned, is that if it's not on sewer and it's on septic, you'd have to build your bus wash somewhere else. So those are our 4 options that we've sort of been playing with now. Next steps. For us as a district is we're going to continue the search for possible land. We don't want to leave any rock uncovered. It doesn't really work well because there's a lot of rocks underneath the ground in Penfield, but we don't want to leave any of those rocks uncovered. We want to see what is out there, what type of properties there, what are our options. Continue to review these options, see if there are others. Evaluate the impact of all the options on the budget. The term I use in many of these options is aidability, and that really is critical because with aidability in New York State, we want to maximize our aid so we decrease the impact to the local share in our community. So we really are looking at that and working with the experts in New York State Education. And then we'll review the aid ability through New York State Education Department and make sure that we maximize aid on anything that we do to support our project. Before I do questions, I would just say is that we, as you remember, and the community members, the board knows, is that we were potentially looking at a December 2017 vote for this project when we first rolled out. That is all but off the table. We can't get done. I mentioned that a home developer can build a home from contract signing to moving in about 3 to 4 months. We take a lot more time because everything has to go through New York State Education Department. We have to, put out bids for what we do. We have to get voter approval. So it's a slower process, and we simply can't get the process done by December. So we're potentially looking possibly at a vote in March. We need some more time. And as we go through with the prestige and community outreach, we'll be sharing this information more with the community. And those are the options we're at now, and trying to update the community on where we are with our current project. And are there any questions?
Board members, any questions? Okay.
All right, I gotta remember to, if I can talk long enough, there's no questions. No, I know that all of this stuff is in talking about potential land purchase, potential construction, potential capital projects. There's going to be a lot of questions that come up. So obviously for the board, please don't hesitate to ask publicly or when you see me. And then obviously the community who's watching, and the information we put out is if they have any questions, don't hesitate to pick up the phone or send an email. Nancy Bradstreet's our director of communication. You can go directly through her, or you can reach out to myself or Mark Sansucci around any information about the capital project.
Barb?
Just to clarify, in the initial stages when, for the Atlantic Avenue property, you met with the neighbors that were there?
Yes.
Have they been informed that?
Yep. So thank you, Barb. We did an invite to the neighbors who lived on Atlantic Avenue, right across the street and right in front of the property we own, because our property we own is sort of set back. All but one was able to attend. And I did meet at another time with that neighbor and spoke to her on the phone. But we have since sent a letter to all of those neighbors, thanking them for their input and explaining to them that with the new wetland delineation, at this point, we're not going to be looking to build our B&G facility. So, they actually, I will be very honest, I love Penfield. They were all the neighbors. I mean, it's a change. Anytime something is getting built near you, it's a change. But everybody was always very respectful, very open, had great questions, offered wonderful suggestions, some that we originally put into the plan, like on where the driveway would be. So we did inform them all in writing formally that's off the table at this point.
Oh, because, you know, I know that that's one of our visions is communication, and that was a beautiful piece. Thank you.
Thank you. No, great question. I appreciate it.
Any other questions? Lisa?
Sorry, because it came up today, and can you remind us what's going on at the linear park? I forget what's going on there. Like,
Sure.
why we're using that property.
Yeah, so the Linear Park Water Treatment Center down there is really had been in a conversation for a number of years between the district and the town. The town owns that area. It has not been used for years and years. And then, I'm looking at Alan, I apologize, but was it 2 years ago we stepped into it, or last year?
We moved in about 2 years ago.
So we moved in about 2 years ago. We did sort of strike a deal with the town. They were wonderful, and there was an agreement which was that we would do sort of the day-to-day maintenance, but any major projects, we'd go back to the town as the property owner, because they own it. We're leasing it from them, and we would take a look at cost for when that came up. So right now, the easiest way for me to explain it is it's really our overflow, because there's not enough room at the current site on 5 Mile Line to store everything. Seasonal equipment that we don't always need gets stored there. It is our central drop-off for paper, and then a lot of our maintenance stuff is there as well. And I'm always amazed, but you know, Alan McNiff, our director of facilities, is in the audience. So I say this as kudos. Is, you know, the crew we have of our B&G men and women are amazing at, you know, there's pieces for everything. So, you know, when you need a doorknob, it's not, you got to go out and always buy the doorknob. We have one somewhere, and that's all organized and stored. Some of that stuff is at Linear Park. Does that answer the question?
No, I think it's interesting for the public to just be made aware for efficiency purposes. So building, ground, and transportation, like it's sprinkled, right? Sprinkled over here, and it's sprinkled over there, and then they're parking at Charles Finney, and I just think it's an interesting point.
I think I appreciate you bringing it up, because I do really think that, you know, I think the unsung heroes of our district many times are our bus drivers, our B&G, our facility people, because we see the work that they do every day, but we don't always see them doing it. Right, you walk through the buildings and they're clean. You know, the lockers are working, the windows are fixed. Any you know, wear and tear on a building is quickly taken care of, because we want to make sure that our students come to a friendly, opening environment school. And so they do incredible stuff. So you don't always notice it, but right now, what we have in place isn't really ideal. We've got some over at Linear Park and some equipment. We have some at 5 Mile Line and some equipment. It's sort of scattered everywhere. So it's not the most efficient use. But as I said before, we're a school district, and we make magic with what we have, and Alan is incredible with that in terms of working with what he has and working with his crew to do good things. But it's a great point, because we're sort of all over the place at this point.
John?
Our newer residents may recognize that it's actually Channing Philbrick Park.
Yep.
Not Linear Park, just for somebody maybe new to the community. I know we all call it Linear. And I guess it changed to Channing Philbrick, like, I don't know, 5 years ago or something. So if anybody's confused and you're looking for Linear,
It's Channing Philbrick
Philbrick
Park.
Park.
Okay. Well, I'm glad formerly known as Linear Park. And it's, as you all, if you all remember, it's the Water Treatment Center, formerly known as the Sewage Treatment Center. But I appreciate that. And you know, there is an added benefit there in the sense that it sort of sat dormant, and having our crew down there during the hours and sometimes in the evenings, I think it helps. But it would be great to, at some point, ideally, to centralize all of that. Thank you.
Plus making a left there.
Making a left. Yeah.
Taking your left in front of you.
All right, so if there's no other questions with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Pfeiffer, who's going to walk us through the Penfield Professional Learning Plan for the next 3 years.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah.
The board will recognize the professional learning plan that is in your packet. It's been the same plan we've been working with now since the 14-15 school year. With this plan, as required by the Commissioner's Regulations 100.2, was approved again by the Professional Development Plan Committee to be presented to the board for approval. You have to approve this plan for us annually, and we submit it to New York State as required. The plan, since it was presented to you in January, you'll recall that the committee got together to look at adding some of our approved CTLE providers, our continuing teacher leader education providers, to that plan, and we presented those changes to you back in January for your approval. So the plan, as you saw then, is largely unchanged. Our focus, though, where there is an area of change, is with our mentor program. So I'll skip ahead a little bit here. These are the highlights that you've seen before in previous presentations, and this hasn't changed. The plan does align with the goals, although I see, the board will be presenting their newly revised goals later on in the meeting, and I will update the plan before we submit it to NYSED to reflect those changes to our goals at that time. But it certainly aligns to the goals that we've had, and those goals are largely consistent. It builds upon our current and prior initiatives, so it doesn't swing us around, as we've talked about, the importance of the consistency and how gracious we are for the consistency of the goals from the board. We can continue to build on that. It keeps our efforts vertically and horizontally aligned, so we can continue with the work that we're doing in terms of the ensured focus on learning and meeting the needs of the whole student. It helps us prioritize our work and gives our principals and our other administrators something to lean on when they get asked by our staff to participate in various professional development opportunities. Our administrators can look at this and say, well, this is the plan. How does that fit? Where does that fit in what we're trying to accomplish and in our plan? So it helps us with those decisions. And it allows teachers to have say in what they want to do in terms of the professional learning. We know that teachers have different strengths and needs in terms of professional learning, and it gives them the opportunity to self-evaluate and make recommendations on their own behalf about the professional learning that they're going to engage in. And of course, this plan was developed in a collaborative manner as required by the New York State Education Department with both teachers, administrators, as well as a parent representative. So we think it remains a quality document, and we appreciate the board's consideration moving forward. Having said that, the board will also recall that last year we updated you with some changes we had made to start the 16-17 school year to the mentor program as it was outlined in that professional learning plan. We were faced with a kind of a tight timeline and a challenge of not having a sufficient number of mentors to help our newly hired teachers. And a mentor program is another requirement of a professional development plan from the State Education Department. And so in order to increase our pool, Barb and I sat down and had conversations with Tom, and we made some last-minute adjustments, and those weren't reflected in the document that was in the hands of the board or New York State. And so we felt it was necessary to convene a collaborative group to look specifically at our teacher induction and retention programs. And by that we mean our mentor program, our new teacher orientation, and our peer program, to start looking at how can we get that up to date, reflective of what we need to do in order to ensure that our programs are effective, and specifically to the mentor program that we have sufficient teachers available to serve as mentors. And so Barb and I worked with Lynn Rainey, who had been integral in developing the previous iteration of the mentor program, to convene a committee that had teacher representation through the PEA from each of our buildings, as well as administrative representation from PAC, to look at what do we need to change to get a program in place in terms of our mentor program that will meet our needs in terms of having an ample pool of mentors, but also ensure that it's a meaningful program for both the mentors and those teachers who are going to be mentored. And so what we found through that process was the meat of our mentor program was really very strong. The committee felt that the process and the work that the mentor and the mentee would engage in was sound in practice, and it should be continued, and that we didn't need to make major changes to that. But the areas that were reflected in the changes we made last year needed to be addressed. And so the areas that the committee is recommending the change to, and this was approved by the Professional Development Plan Committee, were in the areas of the qualifications of an individual to serve as a mentor. The area that we had changed really was around the number of years experience in Penfield for a person to be considered as a mentor. And what we agreed upon was that the person should have at least 3 years of teaching experience in Penfield, or teaching experience, and at least 2 of those would be in Penfield. We had a lot of discussion on, well, that could potentially mean that you would have a teacher who is not tenured serving as a mentor. And the reason we're okay with that is we often have teachers within the district who will change tenure areas but stay within Penfield, and they will still make excellent mentors. And we didn't want to have that language around tenure handcuffing us and prohibiting us from using them as quality mentors in the process. And so that's where we felt like if we said they've got at least 3 years teaching and at least 2 of those have been in Penfield, they'll have a strong enough background with the Penfield way to help a new teacher to Penfield along in this program, and we were comfortable with that language. The other area where we had run into significant roadblocks in the past was with the amount of required training. In the previous version of the plan, 2 full days, so 12 hours of professional development were required to serve as a mentor. And what we heard from our teachers who wanted to be mentors was that was just too large of a commitment to take 2 days, typically consecutive days, either during the school year or even during the summer, and that some of that professional development wasn't always as beneficial to being a mentor as maybe we had thought it was when it was developed a number of years ago. And so we took a look at that, and what we came to agreement upon was that to be considered for an introduction into the mentor pool, a 6-hour day, 1 day of professional development would be required, and we would offer that multiple times throughout the year. That would be provided by Lynn Rainey. And that would be over the philosophies of the mentor program, the requirements as put forth by New York State of a mentor program. And then once an individual was selected to be paired with a new teacher to serve as a mentor, there would be a 1-hour update that would really focus on the logistics of being a mentor in Penfield. What are the requirements? What do you have to make sure you do? What are the forms you have to fill out? What do you have to make sure you have conversations with the mentee about? And those teachers on the committee who had served, some had served as either a mentor or a mentee, and some had actually served as both, felt that would be a great approach to it. You get the overview in the 6 hours, and then you get the nitty-gritty in a 1 hour at the time that you would be paired. And if you went more than 3 years, every 3 years you would have to go through that 1 hour logistics training again to make sure that you were up to date as a mentor on what that meant. And then the last area where we looked at changing the process a little bit was in terms of the application and the pairing process. The original iteration of the program required a letter as well as submitting an application to the HR office. It was a little bit cumbersome given the amount of information that we now have in electronic systems regarding all of our employees. And so now the application is done through our My Learning Plan system, our professional development plan system. It's far more concise. There is a brief interest statement required, and that goes to Barb. And then in terms of pairing, the old plan required that a committee approve all pairings, and it just wasn't realistic for us to do that, to constantly be bringing groups of administrators and teachers together to approve all pairings, and it really, quite frankly, wasn't necessary. So now the principals will typically initially make the selection, but then they will work with Barb to just ensure that there aren't any issues or concerns in the background with the pairing or with the individual who's going to serve as a mentor. This way we can ensure that we've got the most quality individuals stepping forward and serving in this role. And so those are the major changes that we've made to that mentor program and that we'd like to, that the Professional Development Committee has approved, and they're now up for the board's consideration in the overall plan. Our next steps with that Teacher Induction and Retention Program Review Committee, and that is a mouthful, will be to take a look at our new teacher orientation, which is our 4-day program that we have for all new teachers in August every year, to look at and review that program with those teachers, because many of them haven't been through it in quite some time, and so to get their feedback on what we're providing to our new teachers in terms of inducting them into Penfield, and then also the follow-up days associated with that. How are we bringing them back together throughout the course of their first year and potentially into the second year to ensure that they're successful. And then also the peer program, which is for teachers who may have been tenured in other districts but are new to Penfield, and they continue to get we don't call it a mentor because it's not an official mentor program. They get a peer to help them along the way and learn the Penfield way as well. So that's where that group will be going through the next school year and possibly the year after that, as we continue that work moving forward. And so those are the changes to the plan that you've been presented with. And again, I'll update the goals, thank you, before we submit it to New York State if the board approves the plan at the next meeting.
Thank you, Jim. Any questions? Lisa?
Oops, sorry. Is this document, we have the unchanged document, or this is the new document?
The mentor application should be
like-
the new one that you have, but it won't have the new board goals in it yet because I didn't change, they haven't been approved for the board, so I didn't put them in the document that was provided to you.
All right, well, I'm looking at Appendix C, page
Okay.
14, because it says a mentor is an experienced tenured professional.
Then perhaps you got the wrong
Maybe I
version
have the
of the
wrong
document.
version.
Yeah.
Or just
So
as
I can
F-
make sure that the board gets the updated version again, and I'll send it out to
Okay.
everybody so that you have it. I'll
Or just to
give it
make sure
Sharon,
that
we can
it's,
send you an
if
email.
if we're taking language out, that we
Yep,
found it.
yep, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
So I will now turn it over to Mr. Bill Maloney, who is going to go over our reorganizational items for this board meeting. Take it away.
Thank you. This evening, you have a list of roughly 52 items in front of you. The list tends to grow each year. We always add one or two on, just because of how we do our business and new and current events that come up through law and through policy. The reorganizational meeting is also referred to as the organizational meeting. If you hear that, they coincide together. Basically, the meeting has to be done within the first 15 days of July. Also establishes annual appointments, designates responsibilities, provides authorizations for routine business. I'm not going to read all 52 items to you, but just to highlight a few of them. Your listing will include a lot of appointments. One of the most important appointments is the district treasurer. But that's definitely in there. Authorization to sign checks, establish petty cash funds, authorize change funds for food service, athletics, libraries, etc. Authorize board members to attend training seminars, trainings, and workshops. Designation of primary banks for us to write checks for payroll and our accounts payable. Authorize student club funds. Establish fees for facility use. So when our outside organizations rent our facilities, we have a fee structure that we can charge. Authorize treasurer to temporarily invest school monies. Authorizes the participation in cooperative bids. And appoints building student attendance keepers, establish standard workday for certain employees, and establish a fee for bus use, just to name a few of them. Like I said, there are 52 of them. Obviously, there's more detail in your agenda, but just to give you an idea of what some of the items were, those are the ones I felt were most important. That's it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Any board members, any questions or comments? No? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
So that wraps up our,
Excuse
Yeah.
me, that's it. Okay.
yep. Yeah, so there's a couple other slides on here, which is the goals that the board revisited during the workshop, and I figured we could talk about those under President's remarks.
Okay, all right, that's fine, thank you.
But that concludes my superintendent reports, so thank you to Jim and Bill.
Okay. Okay, board members, we're on page 3, and we're going to pick up on that organizational items that Bill just talked about. Everyone's had time to read and review all the items, and like you said, 52 different items running from page 3 through page 14. So there are a couple of corrections, though. On page 6, under number 10, there is a name correction. We have, under the Harris Hill Elementary School, Harris Hill Elementary School, we have the name Kathy Alguire, and it should be Karen Alguire. And then on page 13, number 48, you probably picked up on this, where it refers to the 2015-16 school year, and it should be the 2017-2018 school year. So, with those corrections made, may I have a motion, please, and a second, that the above organizational items 7A1 through 7A 52 be approved for the 2017-2018 school year. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed. Thank you. We have change orders, starting on page 14. All of them approved, reviewed by and supported by and approved by the appropriate people. And may I have a motion, please, and a second that the change orders as described above be approved.
So moved.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed. Thank you. Financial items. BOCES initial contract for services for the 2017-18 school year. A contract in the amount of $8,649,412.68 has been received from the Board of Cooperative Educational Services covering services to be provided Penfield students for the 2017-2018 school year. If the board approves, the following motion is in order. May I have a motion, please, and a second that the Board of Education authorize the signature of the president to the contract in the amount of $8,649,402.68 from the Board of Cooperative Educational Services covering services to be provided Penfield students for the 2017-18 school year and payment of the subsequent invoices for services according to the schedule of 10 times per year, plus additional supplemental billings as needed. The superintendent of schools is also authorized to amend the contract from time to time as additional services are requested or dropped. Do I include this part yet? We just do this one motion. Okay.
So moved.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed. Thank you. Cindy DeVore is the school physician. It is necessary to approve the contract terms and conditions for the 2017-18 school year per the terms of the 2012 RFP. The contract calls for the payment of $34,147, a 2.9% increase over last year based on the PAC contract. Dr. DeVore's contract runs August 1st, 2017 through July 31st, 2018. May I have a motion and a second that the Board of Education authorizes the signature of the superintendent of schools to negotiate final terms and to enter into a contract with Dr. Cindy DeVore and the district for the 2017-18 school year. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed? Thank you. Monroe No. 1 BOCES has requested permission to refuel the vehicles used for the Penfield Central School District Driver Ed program at our pumps located at the bus garage on 5 Mile Line Road. The district currently allows the Monroe County Sheriff's Department and the Penfield Fire District to fuel their vehicles at the district pumps. The district is reimbursed for this gas based on our cost of gas on state contract plus a 10-cent per gallon surcharge. The agreement with Monroe 1 BOCES Driver Ed program is under the same terms. Entering this agreement with the Monroe 1 BOCES does not pose a burden on the district and benefits the students enrolled in driver education. Approval is recommended. Resolution authorizing the municipal agreement. Whereas Monroe 1 BOCES Driver Ed program has indicated a desire to enter into an intermunicipal agreement with Penfield Central School District, and whereas the Board of Education finds that there is mutual benefit to such an arrangement. Therefore, be it resolved that the superintendent of schools is hereby authorized to enter into an intermunicipal agreement with Monroe 1 BOCES Driver Ed program for the provision of vehicular refueling for the period August 1st, 2017 to July 31st, 2020. May I have a motion, please, and a second?
So moved.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed. Thank you. District Emergency Response Plan. Pursuant to Commissioners' Regulations, Section 155.17E3, the district held the required public hearing for the Emergency Response Plan on May 23rd, 2017. It has been available for public comment for 30 days and must now be adopted by the Board of Education. May I have a motion, please, and a second, that the emergency response plan be approved as presented on May 23rd, 2017, per Commissioners Regulation, Section 155.17E3.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed. Thank you. Code of Conduct for New York State Board Members. New York State School Boards Association has a code of conduct for school board members. School boards may approve it yearly as a reaffirmation and show of support for the state code of conduct, and this was included in the packet. May I have a motion, please, and a second, that the Board of Education approve the New York State School Board's code of conduct?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed. Thank you. Okay, President's remarks. So, you're gonna do that? or-
I'd be happy to.
Okay, because, yes.
Okay.
I'm asking you to, but
Okay.
then I have some comments.
Sure. So, June 16th was my son Isaac's birthday, but it was also the Board of Education workshop that we held all day here at the high school. And a lot of great work, I would say, just as the superintendent and district office staff working with the Board of Education. One of the things we did during that meeting was to review the district goals. There's 3 goals that the district has been consistent with in agreement with the Board of Education. And so I would say no major changes in terms of the goals, but just some slight tweaks to the language. And so those 3 goals are here. The Board of Education affirms the following 3 revised strategic district goals, which will continue to guide the work of each central office department and all district schools. Our first goal is the academic achievement and excellence. Each Penfield school will provide a safe, supportive, engaging learning environment, promoting growth toward academic achievement and excellence, as well as the development of the whole student. Goal number 2 focuses on partnerships. The district will support collaborative partnerships that foster learning, communication, understanding, and a positive culture in our schools and in our community. And fiscal responsibility. Penfield's operations and budget will be structured to maintain safe and efficient facilities and to provide adequate resources that support our academic goals and reflect the financial values of the community. And those are our 3 district goals.
Thank you, Tom.
You're welcome.
And then in addition to that, I just want, bringing up our workshop, I thought it was a really productive and a good, just a day well spent together and going over the goals and going over Jim's plans and all of that. So I was happy with how it went and the outcome, and it just felt good, and it was good to reaffirm what we talked about there. And then in addition to that, Sherry has sent out some notes regarding our workshop and our strategic plan, and I was going to send that out to you before today, and then my computer crashed.
Oh.
We love technology, right? Yes. But when I get my computer up and running again, I can send all of that out to you. And then what I was hoping we could do is you could send me your comments and your thoughts about things, and then we can figure out how we're going to go forward and how to move along with that whole with our goals and plans for the year. The other thing I wanted to mention is we have I'll finish the president's remarks. Well, I am finished with the president's remarks. I'm going to go on to new business now and remind everybody about committee assignments. I need to know what everybody is interested in doing this year, and I would like to have that as soon as possible so that we can get that up and running as well. Going back to the strategic plan, if, depending on when my computer is, I'm going to get that out to you as soon as possible. But what I was hoping is that we could kind of shoot for July 26th to get those comments back to me so that we can, get it moving, because August is going to be here before we know it, and I even hate to think about that. So that's what I was going to say about that. The different committee assignments for Monroe County, for NISBA, the subcommittees. Take a look, see, oh, yes, Barb.
I can take care of the NISBA legislative piece.
You wanted to do that again this year?
Well, yeah, because I did it last year, so.
Yes, and you did a good job with that, too.
Oh, well, thank you. And they already asked me if I was coming back, so.
Oh, very nice. And then one final
Cross that
thing.
off.
Well, I'm glad you let me know about that, so that's one thing done, very good. The other thing I wanted to just state in my first role as your president is I wanted to thank everybody for your support. I feel very honored to be fulfilling this role, but I also feel like I've got two sets of very big shoes to fill with Carol and John going before me. I appreciate your guidance and your help and your mentorship and your friendship, and I'm looking forward to doing the best job I can possibly do. And one of the first things I want to do as president is welcome our new board member, John Otney. We're very happy to have you here. We're delighted. And we wish you the very best. We're all here to help you out in any way we can, and we hope you'll reach out if you feel the need, and never feel like there isn't somebody you can ask, because we're all here to help you succeed.
Thanks.
All right. Yeah, well, if there's no other questions or comments, all right, may I have a motion, please, in a second to call the meeting adjourned at 8:10 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Not opposed? Thank you.